Welcome into the Sports Objective Podcast. I'm Dave Richmond. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle from LaGrange Barber, how are you?
What's going on, Dave? As we sit here and talk about, how all the basketball games we aren't going to play and all the COVID cases and all the chicken mole.
Yeah, chicken mole. If you don't know what that is, then get up with us. We'll explain to that. And if you have a chance, get the North Carolina Almanac. It's a great book. It tells about all the towns in North Carolina and their origins. And that way it'll save us time from this great show. I tell you what, when you're trying to plan a show, don't do it when in the world of COVID because anything can happen. But Bubba, we're so excited. We still wanted to have our good friend for almost 3 years now, Ryan Wallen, on, right?
Yeah, of course, the Pirates were supposed to play Cincinnati last night, that being Wednesday. But, of course, that was impacted by COVID on Cincinnati's side. And we had done that interview with Chad Brindle. So now, things got changed around even faster this time. But we still wanted to have Ryan on. Ryan, welcome back.
Yep, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Ryan, how many games has Temple played now?
They have played 5, including today's game.
Jiminy Christmas. And how much of that has been because of you guys having to quarantine or because of other teams having to quarantine?
So they have had, I guess, the last 2 weeks before this week, they had actually been in COVID protocol because they had a recent outbreak on the team. I guess it was one of the managers or something from what it sounded like, but obviously with a case, you have to pause activities. So Temple came back this week, lost to SMU earlier in the week down in Dallas, and then today came back home, played UCF, and actually pulled off a nice, impressive win against the Knights in Philadelphia, 62-55. But now they're going to have to – they were supposed to be jumping on a plane to head down to play you guys, obviously, but now they will be heading to New Orleans to play Tulane for a game that was actually postponed a few weeks ago because of the COVID with the Owls program. So they will get that game made up now. But obviously, Temple's whole non-conference slate, aside from one game, had been wiped out due to COVID. Obviously, up here in Philly, we play the Big Five, which is basically the tournament every season, in-season tournament between all the Philly schools, that being Villanova, St. Joe's, LaSalle, Temple, and I'm missing
Drexel.
Yeah, Drexel. But so they had planned to obviously try and at least do that in the non-conference. That didn't happen because of early season issues within the Owls program. They're still saying that those games might make up, but right now it looks like just with the American Conference slate, how jam-packed it's going to be, obviously with all these makeup games now, that probably will not happen. So it looks like it will just be the 20-game American Conference slate and then that one game that they did squeeze in with New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Yeah, and Coach Joe Dooley was talking earlier today about how concerned he is about how we're going to have to squeeze in, or about how they want to try to squeeze in all these conference games. And how he doesn't like the idea of trying to play 4 games in a week and back-to-back nights on the road in some cases, and how he doesn't think it's fair for the players, and not that their health to do with COVID, but their physical health and the potential of injuries playing so many games in a short period of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, it's going to be difficult to get all these games in. I think with the rising cases, obviously within the country right now, it's hard to imagine that they're going to be able to actually get all these games in and within the season that they want to get it in within that time frame. Obviously, the conference could always push back the conference tournament. Maybe March Madness gets pushed back a couple weeks. We don't know yet. Obviously, that's up to the NCAA and each individual conference how that's going to play out. But obviously right now it's Temple's played the fewest games in the American right now, with 5 games being played. So obviously that's a concern now that they're going to have to try and play another 16 games in, you figure, a month and a half before the conference tournament would get underway. And obviously then you have at least one game there, possible with the upwards of 4 in the first in 4 days. So obviously a big issue with injuries, and Temple's already been short a couple of players this year due to regular injuries. COVID aside. So obviously a concern, but so far it hasn't been, I guess, the worst of the worst for the Owls.
Do you guys, all three of you, do y'all think that we could see potential of a lot of conferences? There's no money to be made beyond TV deals with the conference tournaments this year. So you guys think we could see to get these regular season games in, conferences, tournaments, some conferences just not doing their postseason tournament and then awarding whoever wins the regular season the auto bid?
Yeah, I definitely could see conferences doing that, especially like the mid-majors and all in the smaller one-bid leagues. I don't see them risking it at that point and just having teams go out and play quote unquote almost meaningless games. I don't want to say meaningless because every player obviously dreams at the D1 level of playing the NCAA tournament, and they probably want to try and play those games because that might be their last game, might be their last chance to get into the NCAA tournament. But you also have to think of players' health and safety at the end of this as well, and as well as the staffs and the people putting on these tournaments. And you have to imagine that some of these conferences that know that their best shot to win an NCAA tournament game possibly is the regular season champ.
Mm-hmm.
They might actually just nix them like they were planning to do last year, award the regular season champion the bid, and then just hope for next year to be better.
Yeah, they need to. I have an idea for the regular season, by the way, Ryan, with baseball having double headers. Can you imagine if basketball had double headers to get all these games?
The old rec league tournaments in high school, of course. I'm sure some players would love that, but I mean, it's gonna take its toll on players' bodies, obviously, because I watched the Joe Dooley interview from earlier today, and he said you can't simulate game speed in practice, and it's hard when sometimes you're not going to have but one practice heading into some of these games now with the tightness of the schedule. And I know UCF's Johnny Dawkins had said that heading in today, because they were coming off of a COVID pause as well, that they only had one full practice and another half of a practice heading into today's game.
It's definitely scary times, and the bubble in Indianapolis, it looks like that's a great thing that they can pull off with NCAA, all the games in Indianapolis. I think that's a fantastic idea because even if we don't have fans, they've got to have that losing. I think, guys, what was it, $600 million for not having the tournament?
Oh, the TV deal, the TV deal. Yes, it's incredible. I mean,
so you can't do that.
There will be an NCAA tournament, even if it's like, hey, who wants to play? I mean, even if you got teams opting out, hey, I guarantee East Carolina will go.
Just like there was a bowl season, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and the same thing with baseball. If they have to push that back, some or whatever we have to do. Right now, it's supposed to be February 19th. We'll have Cliff Godwin in the second half of part of our show, so keep that in mind. We'll be talking to him, and one of the things we talk about is scheduling. And February 19th, Rhode Island. We'll see if that happens. Who knows? That seems like an eternity away. Ryan, 2020 seemed like it was 2 or 3 years, and 21. Who knows how long that's going to last? More than the what we know is 365 days. It feels like mentally it's way more than that.
Oh yeah, we're off to a great start already. Aside from everything, not to get into politics and all that fun stuff, but yeah, we're off to a great start already.
I'm optimistic, guys. I think the second half of the year, even when vaccines get out there, and I think the second half of the year is it's not going to be back to normal, but we're going to start to get back to normal in July. That's my prediction.
Yeah, my good news is there's a lot of people. It's kind of like waiting for, I don't know, like a free meal or somebody saying we're going to give you $100. The people are waiting in long lines for the vaccine. That to me makes me so proud. We're going to be talking to Dr. John Bream in just a little bit. He'll be talking about COVID, and the men's basketball had to unfortunately suspend operations, and they're on pause right now. So we'll be talking to him about the latest COVID, and we'll do that in just a little bit. But Ryan, let's talk about sports right now. How are things in Temple as far as the athletic program? And we know about it was tough this year with speaking of COVID and injuries for the Owls.
What the hell's going on with your football program, Ryan?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Thank you. Just cut to the chase. Yeah.
Well, obviously, the last time I was on was before the Temple ECU game, and obviously we saw how that played out in itself with the coming on the field doing warm-ups, and then a Temple player starts showing symptoms. They have to take them to the hospital, all that fun jazz that pushed the game back, delayed it for a little bit. Obviously, Temple got their butts kicked by the Pirates for the first time in what feels like forever. Obviously, first time since I had started paying attention to Temple. So was quite the shocker, I guess you could say, in terms of, the Pirates finally getting over the hump, but I really expected it at this point. But obviously, I assume you guys are asking about the transfer portal and the exodus that Temple has had so far this year within the program. So obviously, I think with the NCAA having this free year of eligibility and seeming like they're going to approve a one-time transfer waiver for, it seems like, all players, it looks like this year. They're going to vote on it later this month. I assume that they're going to pass it just like they did with basketball, that these players are looking for maybe a better opportunity, and some of them are looking to boost their draft stock. And the interesting thing is, obviously, the major concern with Temple fans has been these players are all experienced players that are leaving the program. And I mentioned quarterback Anthony Russo, obviously being the most major or prominent name in there, as well as players like Ifeanyi Maije, who was their all first team defensive tackle last year. You had their second string defensive tackle, Chris Banks, who was going to be the number one this year. Now with Maije leaving, he enters the transfer portal. You have a single digit guy, Isaiah Graham Mobley, transfer to Boston College. And people are all of a sudden like, what's going on? What the hell's going on? Is it Rod Carey? What's going on? The program's burning down. So you look at some of these guys. In the case of Banks, that was more of a confusing one because he is an underclassman. But guys like Russo, guys like Maije, who had the option to go to the NFL this year, guys like Vince Picozzi, who was an offensive lineman that decided to transfer out, Linwood Crump, another graduate who would not have been around next year because he was a graduate student already. You look at these guys and maybe they just decided to transfer because they've been here for 5 years already. And, maybe they just want a taste of something new. And that was the explanation for some of the players. From some of the other players, they've said that they just feel like maybe Rod Carey didn't fit the vibe that they were looking for, I guess you could say. And it was just a different culture in the locker room opposed to Matt Rule and Jeff Collins. From what I hear, Rod Carey is very much more hands-off. He lets the players have more of a say within the program about, who does stuff and how stuff's conducted. And he's more of a laid-back coach opposed to a Matt Rule who, seemed very fun and laid back when he was in front of the camera and all. But, he still came from a Joe Paterno system when he was at Penn State that it was very strict. It was law and order. You are expected to do this as a player. And if you don't, see ya, or you're not playing. So, it doesn't seem like Rod Carey maybe has the same style there. And I think that's just going to take some getting used to. And I think you're going to see that this year, obviously, with the amount of turnover Temple's roster has had this offseason. We kind of saw it in the ECU game where half the players playing in that game were freshmen and sophomores, what it ended up being. And obviously you were starting a fifth string walk-on quarterback for that finale. So you couldn't really imagine that was going to be where Temple was at the end of the season, but that's where it ended up. And we're just going to have to see how it plays out now that Rod Carey's getting his guys in the program. And so far, I think he's done a really good job in the transfer portal of making up for the losses that they've had. I mean, he landed a 4-star quarterback who was the starter for Georgia at the beginning of the year in DeJuan Mathis. He landed a 4-star running back in Iverson Clement, who played at Florida very limitedly, but he's still a 4-star running back. And typically, these SEC programs don't take scrubs. They're talented players. It's just about now getting them into the program, getting them adjusted to the system, and hopefully getting some stability and some consistency, some cohesion with all these units now coming into the season next year.
Yeah, no doubt.
Ryan, talk about, and forgive me if you may have, I know you were just talking about some of the transfers. I had to step away for a moment, but I know there were a couple from the University of North Carolina defensive linemen.
So, yeah, they were actually two of the more recent transfer commits that they had landed in Lancine Toure, who is the brother of Indianapolis Colts defensive end Kamiko Toure. And then you have Zach Gill, who also they landed a defensive tackle, who was another highly recruited player out of high school. Didn't see the field a whole lot down in North Carolina. I guess Toure maybe was in his ear a bit about, joining him at Temple. And I think that definitely helped because Toure was the first to commit. So now you have two pretty highly rated players coming out of high school who didn't see the field a lot, joining the Temple defensive line, who has had, success putting players in the NFL, and they've done a very good job of developing guys into star players and starters in the NFL. Obviously, guys like Hassan Reddick, who now in the NFL is at linebacker, but was a defensive end at Temple. Matt Ioannidis, who plays for the Washington, and among other guys. So we'll have to see, obviously, how they are, and that's obviously the big concern here with the transfer portal. That yes, you've landed what on paper looks to be great transfers based on ratings from high school, but their college film is very limited. So obviously, you're trading production for what appears to be the future, and you hope that that's going to play out. So you're obviously going to have to just wait and see, and that's going to be the thing. Who knows if we're even going to be able to wait and see in the spring, because typically, we have that spring ball season where we can see if, maybe this guy's going to be really good for them, and he's going to be an impact player come the fall. And I don't know how Temple's going to do that yet, obviously, with COVID. So we might not actually get to see or talk to these guys again until the fall. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But on paper, the transfers that Temple has gotten look great. Let's see if they can make up for it now for what they lost.
Yeah, I can't imagine that that the NCAA, that I would imagine everybody's going to be allowed, unless there's some sort of, with the city of Philadelphia or something, going to be allowed to have spring ball. I mean, it's we played in the fall. They're playing basketball, so if they don't allow spring practice, that would be idiotic. And not to mention, FCS football is going to be going on during that time.
Yeah, and obviously that's impacted the transfer portal too, because you have guys that at the FCS level who maybe want to transfer up as a grad and see what they can prove themselves at the FBS level. And I expect there's going to be a lot of movement there in the transfer portal at the end of the FCS season as well. And Temple did a good job last year in picking up a FCS guy in Michael Meese from Dayton, who ended up being a starter, a multi-game starter this year along the offensive line for the Owls. So I expect Temple to continue to search the transfer portal, throughout the spring and look to add on to what they already have. And they already have 8 transfers signed to the program, and I'm assuming they're going to look to add a couple more, particularly probably the interior D-line still. They could use another one there, and then the offensive line.
Ryan, you bring up an interesting point. The FCS, I'm assuming they're Division I, they get that extra year of eligibility too. They're going to play this spring. You got kids that are seniors who are going to finish up their career this spring. You could come back and play again in the fall in the FCS. I wonder how many of them are going to all of a sudden go, hey, I got extra eligibility left. I can transfer without having to sit out a year one time. I'm going to go now play my last year at an FBS school. I just finished up. I graduated. I'm in the case of somebody made the playoffs, won a national championship, etc. You could see some star FCS players that are seniors decide they're going to play FBS football in the fall that are given the opportunity. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and especially if the NCAA does indeed approve the one-time waiver for all players transferring, you could see even non-seniors transferring up to the FBS level if they're good enough. And so that will be obviously interesting. Obviously, with injuries and all, that's going to hurt some of these FCS players that are going to try and play again in the fall, and that's going to be an issue. But we've already seen the issue of schools not taking as many high school recruits because they're trying to save scholarships.
Yeah.
We don't know what the scholarship limit's going to be for next year. So hopefully here within the next couple weeks, leading into part 2 of the signing day, that the NCAA is going to announce maybe the scholarship limits for this upcoming season, because it's really hurting high school recruiting especially, and it's going to really hurt the next year's class, because these schools are going to then be expected to drop back down to 85 scholarships.
You guys know this answer, any of the three of you, for FCS or FBS alike. If you're a senior this year and you are on pace to graduate, but you get that extra year of eligibility, are you considered a grad transfer, just like you would be if you graduated as an underclassman, and you could transfer without sitting out a year anyway to play that extra year of your second senior year over again?
I would assume that's correct. I haven't thought about that, but you already meet the requirements to graduate. I don't know. That's a good.
Well, if you're a senior, let's say, I'm trying to think of, East Carolina have very many seniors, but just pick a senior who, was on pace to graduate for 4 years, this is his senior year, played 4 years or even played 5 years, and now he's graduating. He could come back another year, but he's graduated. I guess he would be treated like a grad transfer who graduated early. He could go play anywhere. So without having to sit out a year, whether the NCAA approves that rule or not.
Yeah, I had that case with Temple, actually. I know one of their players that transferred out. I forget who exactly, but I know the one did graduate within 3 years, and they are transferring, so he will be eligible to play next year right away. So
it's always, hey, Kyle, the problem with you is you're trying to make logic, and the NCAA and logic did not go to, you're hurting your brain.
Yeah, well,
don't try to figure that out. Don't try to figure that out, because we need your brain for the show for sure. Hey, Ryan, man, always great stuff. Appreciate the visit. We want to make sure that we plug your site and how we can find you on social media before you go.
Of course. So you can always follow me on Twitter at Ryan Wallen 247, which is at the top of the screen. You can follow the Owls Daily Twitter account at Owls Daily 247, and then you can always go to owlsdaily.com or 247sports.com/Temple.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much, man. And one last thing, Kyle was saying that rule of 13 games, that seems kind of low, guys, for basketball to make the postseason. With right now, that seems like on point with Temple with only 5 games.
They might get it, but I mean, hey, you had a 2-win South Carolina team in a bowl game, so, and they were chosen over Army, and then Army luckily got to go to a bowl game.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, Ryan, very quickly, Dave, I had a question for him before we let him go. With that tremendous win that Temple had today over UCF, UCF has, they had a win over Florida State in Tallahassee by double figures, and they had also beaten Auburn, who's not a bad basketball team, and some other quality opponents. So with Temple having played so few games, that was very impressive. What was your take on that?
I think the biggest takeaway so far this season has been, we expected this to be a rebuild year for Temple, because, again, the turnover rate on the roster from last year to this year has been so high. I believe it's 9 new players on the team. So obviously you're not going to get a lot of cohesion, especially in the world of COVID, where you didn't have a lot of practices. You had multiple shutdowns. I think Aaron McKee said heading into November that they had only had 5 full practices since the spring. So that was an absolute crapshoot in itself, that, the team didn't even have any cohesion going back to pretty much March of developing it together. And I think today's win obviously showed that Temple has the talent on the team. It's just very young, and they're going to make mistakes, but they're not a bad team. And I think in maybe a year or two that this team's going to be contending for an American championship. They have some really good young shooters on the perimeter, and I think we've seen that so far in the additions of Damian Dunn, who's leading the team right now in scoring, and true freshman Jeremiah Williams out of Chicago's Simeon. He just looks like a really, really solid player who's way beyond his years of being an 18-year-old basketball player. So And obviously, the pleasant surprise has been a transfer in their own right that they got from Dartmouth was Brendan Barry, a guy who is a notorious three-point shooter. Guys that's now second on the team in shooting or in scoring, pardon. And, he's averaging over 11 points a game and shooting 56% from the field. So that's pretty amazing numbers, especially when he put up numbers like that in the Ivy League. And now he's continuing to do that at a higher level of basketball now. And you look at Temple's teams that they've played so far, they've played Houston, they've played SMU twice, they played UCF today, and then they played NJIT. And, all of those teams are pretty decent basketball programs aside from NJIT. No disrespect to the Highlanders, but, they're not that good. But Houston's a top 10 team. They played them, about as good as you can, because Houston is a top 10 team. But they played SMU, who's a fairly decent team in the American Tough, twice for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. They just couldn't get close enough to, just overtake them in the last couple minutes of those games. And SMU pulled away a little bit at the end of both of those. But today, obviously, UCF, like you mentioned, has a win over Florida State, who has been a perennial power the last couple seasons out of the ACC. And, that's definitely speaking to the talent level that Temple has on their team and what they can do for the future.
Hey, don't knock
ask NC State how Florida State, how good they are.
Yeah, don't knock New Jersey Tech. They beat Michigan a few years ago when they were an independent and played the CIT.
It's true.
They did. And you brought up Damian Dunn. Damian Dunn's a Kinston native. He's averaging 15 and 5 and 3.
Yeah, he's been actually, after last year, he played in one game, saw very limited action in said game. I think it was the game against either USC or another one of their early non-conference tests. And he played a couple minutes in that game, and then he had a foot injury that relapsed and put him on the bench the rest of the year. And he's come back now this year, and he looks, again, way beyond being a redshirt freshman and having only seen one game of action in his career up until this year. And right now he's averaging 14.3, 5, and like you mentioned, 3, and pretty decent for a redshirt freshman who looks like he could be the next star, and he was billed as possibly the next player Temple will put into the NBA.
Well, how the hell did he get to Temple?
I believe that was a Chris Clark edition.
But he's from Kinston.
I don't know. Ask your ECU program why they didn't recruit him.
Somebody. I mean, was that Dooley? Was Lebo? Who was here when he went to Temple?
Lebo, right?
Yeah, he was part of 2019.
That was Dooley. I just don't get it. Look, do yourself a favor. Look up Kinston basketball, and you'll be shocked at some of the kids that have came through Kinston. We've produced more NBA players per capita than anywhere else in America.
I will look at that, and I know Temple fans hope you're right, because they have not had a. Did you
grow up a 76ers fan?
I did.
Jerry Stackhouse.
Okay.
There's one for you.
That's one that he would definitely know.
Temple fans are desperate for an NBA player to get into the league right now, because they haven't really had one since Khalif Wyatt. And right now, they think that it's definitely going to help with recruiting to have that NBA player in the league now. And, there were players that have come through Temple in recent years that people thought might have a chance, and then they kind of part, for a better word, lack of a better phrase, they shit the bed. You had Obi Anecchionia, who people thought was going to be an NBA star. I mean, he's making a nice career for himself over in Spain right now, I believe, or Greek, or somewhere over in Europe. And then you had a guy like Quentin Rose, who looked great his sophomore year, and then he forgot how to shoot the ball his junior and senior year. So Temple fans are desperate for that right now. That they hope that that's going to start luring some of these Philly products, especially away from schools like Villanova, who obviously has dominated the city the last couple years, the last decade.
And you got a tight end on your football team for North Lenoir also. Is it Coach?
Yes, Aaron Jordan.
Yeah, that county we were talking about before the show that had the population of 50-some thousand, that's it. That's the county we're talking about. You guys need to stay the hell out of Lenoir County. This is
and JP Mormon's a North Carolina guy too.
Yeah, Well, I don't know where he's from in North Carolina, though. So
All right.
I'm just out of my backyard.
All right, Ryan. Thanks, man. Appreciate it so much. And definitely don't be a stranger. And we're just desperate for basketball games. So hopefully we can get basketball season back underway. And we look forward to having you on when we do play. I guess that'll be sometime in February. So we'll be talking to you soon, buddy.
Yep, of course. I assume it'll be somewhere around Valentine's Day if they end up doing that back-to-back, if it ends up being in Philly.
All right. The city of brotherly love will eat some cheese sticks for you. All right. See you, buddy. Have a good night.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right. Appreciate Ryan coming on tonight, as always. And up next, a guy that's been working hard. I know he's getting ready to get some sleep. So we'll bring in now, if we can, Dr. John Bream. Obviously, wanted to have him on anyway because he's a good friend of ours and missed having you on the show. I know you've been very busy, buddy, with COVID. I know how you feel. This time around, I know with that subject matter, I know how you feel. Not the ED piece of things, but wanted to have you on. Big announcement today with men's basketball with East Carolina, right, Bubba? With the pause of all operations coming to East Carolina basketball. And you and I both know from a big picture as far as
Dave, give John his full introduction.
I am.
No, I want the full introduction as it's written on the screen.
Oh, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, right now, man that needs no introduction, but we're going to give it to John Bream, MD. Help me out there, John. Is a Face P, ER physician, Pirate fan, Pirate alum. You've done it all, John Bream.
I don't know if I've done it all, but at some point, hopefully I will. Yes, the FACEP is a fellow of the American College of Emergency Physicians.
Oh, okay. That's one.
It's got a feather on the cap. That's indicates that you're one of the only about 10% of all ER physicians have the FACEP feather in the cap. So I just throw it out there behind the title.
But that doesn't qualify you to work on Henry Hinton.
Hey, if I ever saw Henry Hinton, I would take the absolute best care of Mr. Hinton, like we do all of our patients. I've been working in his hometown of Edenton a lot lately.
Yeah, you're all over the road here lately, Joe.
Yeah, man, about hitting the ground for Duplin County at 4 a.m. So
the good people of Kenansville will be in good hands.
Yeah, they will.
No doubt.
Windsor, Kenansville, Roanoke Rapids, Edenton. Yeah, I'm all over the East these days. That's the new stall. Oh, and Kill Devil Hills too. Yeah, I'm all over the map.
Hey, John, I have a slogan for you. We the East. That'll be
that's right. I love. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the We the East hashtag. But yeah, the Kyle's point. That was a great conversation with Ryan Wallen and these Eastern North Carolina guys. I mean, yeah, I know we probably didn't have a legit chance to get Bam Adebayo, but you've had some great players that have gone to other schools in America. You Gary Clark at Cincinnati and Kai Bowman got out of the East. I mean, and those are some kids who are on ECU's radar. So
yeah, I don't see how you have a kid go from Kinston to Temple. I just don't. Maybe he wanted to get away from Eastern North Carolina, but my God, I mean, he's averaging 15 points a game as a freshman or sophomore up there, redshirt freshman, I guess. I mean, he should be in the purple and gold.
Yeah, but ECU's have a nice little basketball season too before COVID sort of interrupted things. You lost. I think Newton was the first domino to fall, and ECU just didn't look like themselves, and just haven't really looked like themselves since. With those last couple losses or whatnot. So it's just challenging navigating those things for sure. It's COVID's obviously created challenges for the basketball team, and we know now they've had to pause the season. So
yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate because it's a promising season for the Pirates. We don't get lots of those in basketball, but I firmly believe, and I'll say it here first, Dooley will have us in a postseason tournament before we make a bowl game in football. I said it.
Unless that happens this year, you're wrong because we're going to go to a bowl game next year.
Oh, we'll see.
Or 21. We're going to a bowl game this fall.
All right. We'll
I'll
see.
bet my salary against your salary, John. You want to do it?
Prediction hot take. That's Dr. Bream's hot take. Is that
you want to bet my salary versus your salary? I'm willing to gamble it.
I'll bet you the same thing. I bet Barry Kearney a nickel.
Okay. All right.
Don't you know that you're the T-shirt, the what was it, the minimum wage T-shirt maker? John
that's
does
right. That's right. That's what the douchebag from Tampa called me. But anyway, John, with the basketball program had to pause operations, as you mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
COVID seems to be running rampant in North Carolina, man, right now. I know 8 people personally that have COVID right now.
Yeah, it's bad. So let me. I mean, this is probably the most sobering statistic I can give you. The projected number of deaths by the middle of next week would mean you could wipe any town in North Carolina that's not in the top 100 off the map.
Wow.
In population. So enough people be dead that if you're not the top 100 towns in North Carolina, you'd be wiped off the map. These are towns like Kill Devil Hills, Hamlet, Trinity, Edenton, Ayden. More than the populations of those towns are dead in North Carolina.
How about this, guys? I just got on my phone from NBC News that LA is, we've been talking about how they're a hotbed, and like Orange County, for example, and they actually, COVID kills one person every 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Last week it was so bad, guys, that if you're bad off with COVID now, they don't even take you to the hospital because they don't even have room at the hospital. It's like
they're rationing
triage.
care, rationing oxygen, all that stuff.
Why is it so bad? Obviously, Los Angeles is a large population center, not as congested as New York City, but that whole area is populated extremely. I mean,
20 million.
why is it so bad out there, John, in Los Angeles area?
I mean, it's hard to. I mean, I would just be guessing. I mean, California's got mask mandate, and they've had relatively strict lockdown rules. It's hard to get people to do the little things they need, and it's like I talked about on my Facebook Live last night. We're not spreading COVID because we're going to the grocery store, or because we're eating a socially distant dinner at a restaurant, or we're spreading COVID because 20 people are getting together to watch an ECU basketball game, and they all assume they're all okay, and somebody gets it. Somebody had their pre-symptomatic, and 2 days later they pop with a fever and cough, and they've got COVID. And basically they will have given that to 6 or 7 of those people at the get together. I mean, it's these small gatherings that people aren't stopping that are driving this. And I understand it sucks. Like I make no, I'm not parsing words. I understand it sucks to not get together with your friends and not to get together with your family and not be able to do those things. But that's what you're doing. And I mean, I've seen several people. I took care of a patient, at one of the ERs I work at, and he came in really sick with COVID, and he was on basically all 100% oxygen at 60 liters, like everything I can give you with an OptiFlow to get his oxygen saturation stuff. I was like, well, you've been around, you might have been sick. He's like, well, my son goes to University of Texas and he came home from Christmas. I'm like, well, I know where you got it from then. And so I'm like, great, you may have killed dad. Good job, guys. But it's really it was an interesting study that came out this week that talked about the 60% asymptomatic rate, and 35% or so going to develop symptoms, and 25 wouldn't, but that's who's spreading it. And college towns are really the genesis of the spread. I mean, it is spreading rampant in college communities because you have these moronic college students that keep going to places like Still Life that blatantly violate the governor's orders with no crackdown from PJ Connolly at all, and get away with it. I mean, until there's teeth, this stuff's going to keep happening until Still Life's got like a tiny little outside area that holds probably 20 people, maybe. I don't know. I haven't been to Still Life in a very long time, but they say they have quote an outdoor area, and that they get hundreds of people inside to spread it around, and that's why you have Greenville as a hotbed. But I mean, the COVID situation is terrible. I mean, we've got almost 4,000 people hospitalized right now. And to put that in perspective, how many people, 4,000 hospitalized, that would fill up Vidant, Duke, UNC, Forsyth, and CMC combined.
Wow.
That would fill up all the major hospitals in North Carolina combined with just COVID.
Do you think, we saw Christmas and New Year's, and we're into those cases now, and community spread from Christmas to New Year's where people have passed it on to people they work with. How long do you think it's going to be before I would think it'll start to not taper off? What is the word I'm looking for? It's going to peak
taper
here
off
soon.
would be Yeah, I mean, I think from talking to one of my friends today, who is a medical director at a hospital in the Charlotte metro area, they're expecting this to peak about mid-February. So we still got about a month to go.
Okay.
And that's probably when, cases, maybe my guess, because what I was seeing personally is right before Christmas, the number of cases I was seeing in the ER was starting to taper off a little bit. The Thanksgiving spread was starting to taper off, and then you've got these two big holidays, back to back, where people were getting together.
What about Super Bowl Sunday?
I was going to ask that
that'll
question.
be a big one. Yeah, that'll be a big one too. And that's the problem. There's always some stupid holiday thing that people get together for, and I'm sorry to sound frustrated, because I am, because I get put in harm's way because people are selfish. Now, granted, I'm protected and wear all my stuff, and we're a year into this, and I'm haven't contracted COVID, and I'm well, but it's just. It's just very, very frustrating that, these are simple things, like don't have a Super Bowl party, like, don't get together on New Year's Eve, or if you're going to do something like that, like what we did with my family for Christmas, because, I've got a 7-month-old, it was his first Christmas, everybody quarantined for 2 weeks before they did it. Like my parents didn't go anywhere. My brother and me and my wife, we went to work, and then we went nowhere. We didn't do any other extracurricular activities, so we could realistically do everything we could to be as safe as possible. And that's the kind of things, you've got to do if you want to have a safe get together. But people aren't doing that, and it's just mostly young people who are just being inconsiderate.
John, that very point, I had a question with where we are now. We have people that are waiting hours for a COVID test, right? My thing is, why don't we go ahead and instead of a COVID test, which we eventually are going to transition. This is my question to you as the medical expert and not me. How soon can we transfer? How soon can we transition from COVID test to the COVID vaccine? Because the one thing I've seen a lot is there's a lot of false positives and there's a lot of false negatives or there's a fact where you don't show the symptoms and all of a sudden 2 or 3 days later after you take the test, you have this false sense of security where you think, oh, I don't have COVID. And then all of a sudden 3 days later, you come down with the symptoms. Can't we go ahead and get the vaccine in everybody?
Oh, that's going to be a long time, David. We can't even get it to seniors in North Carolina quickly. The rollout, as has been documented very well, it's just not gone well. And it's because, quite frankly, the corporations, especially Pfizer, you've got the board head of chairman of the board of Pfizer, Scott Gottlieb is a former FDA chair, out there, saying they're going to be able to get vaccine in 20 million arms by the end of the year, and they got 1 million done. They're out there pumping their company, providing unrealistic goals or expectations without doing any of the legwork to make that happen. I called that the day that the vaccine data dropped. You can't get a vaccine that's got to be stored at negative 94 degrees with crazy storage requirements, and just you can't get that to Edenton. Like you don't get that. How are you gonna get that from Greenville to Edenton? Like how is that possible? Like how are you going to get that to Plymouth? It's just not going to happen.
Freezer trucks. I don't.
Yeah, it's just, what are you going to do? It's just not
still an ice
possible.
cream truck.
Yeah, so it's just, we should have known that we were going to have massive logistical problems. Now it's going to get better because the next few vaccines that are coming down the road here, you're going to see Johnson & Johnson and Novavax are both going to be unloading data in the next 2 weeks. And they don't have storage requirement. Standard refrigeration. You can get these vaccines to anybody in any refrigerator. Like it will not be the logistical nightmare that Pfizer is, and to a much lesser degree Moderna. And then you've got maybe AstraZeneca. They had some issues with their trial, but they're another vaccine that's not going to have storage issues. So these logistical challenges are going to be overcome here soon by these other vaccines. As long as the efficacy date on these vaccines is good, which I think it should be, then these issues are by and large going to go away. Then it's going to be an issue of can they manufacture. Now, everybody on the planet knows Johnson & Johnson is not going to have a manufacturing problem. One of the biggest corporations in the world. Like, they're going to be able to do this at scale. And I think Pfizer could too. I mean, they're obviously one of the, but they had some issues with how they designed their vaccine and cold storage. But I anticipate this is going to get much better. But you're going to have the data's going to have to be good, and then the FDA's going to have to give them an emergency use authorization, and then they've got to make sure manufacturing's ready. So I think you're talking early Q2, probably April, May, before maybe late March, but you're talking before you get these vaccines into people's arms at scale. I think you're probably looking at the spring.
John, Governor opened up the current vaccines to anybody 65 and older now that wants to get it and can get it. I know I was talking to an elderly lady yesterday, I believe it was, who lives down in Jones County, who is planning on getting it in February, because that's when Jones County is going to plan on having it and be prepared to have it at that clinic. Is there any way, like, can Greenville, Vidant, can like Chapel Hill, Duke and Durham, can we have like centralized locations where we can do mass amounts of the vaccine on cold storage where people can come and do it, like at a central, like Greenville, Goldsboro, Jacksonville, Raleigh, Wilmington?
Yeah, I think you could. You just gotta, again, that's a logistics challenge, but I think you could do that. Bubba, living in Salisbury, I mean, you look at, they've gotten, 2 shipments this week, and they've got lines down the road, and they're running out quickly. I mean, the demand from senior citizens, the demand from senior citizens is far going to outstrip the demand from healthcare workers. Because many healthcare workers are younger and healthier, one, and two, I think there's a lot of, not that there's just, it's not that I think this is going to be dangerous for childbearing, but there's just no data on that. So I think that's got a lot of women of childbearing age a little on the concern side. So, but if you're 65, I mean, roll up your sleeve and get the shot, and they all know that, and so these are the people who are most wanting and needing the vaccine, and so we got to be able to meet that demand. Now, it's going to take multiple vaccines. You're talking about. Say you've got 330 million people in the United States. If we were to vaccinate all of them, that would take, of the vaccines that are out there, that's 660 million doses. Now, Johnson & Johnson's supposed to be a one shot deal, but again, we got to see what their data looks like. But we got to get that data out there, and we've got to analyze it.
Do you anticipate? I got two parts of this. First, do you anticipate in the fall, for example, the vaccine will be pretty widespread by then, that, like, for example, Dowdy Ficklin, it may not be a capacity limit. It may be, hey, you can come to the game as long as you show that you've been vaccinated.
No.
You think it's going to be capacity limit?
Yes. I don't think ECU will play sports in person at any scale more than they did now until 2022.
We'll be bankrupt. I mean, we can't do that. I mean, we're going to have to figure out something.
I mean,
pay-per-view.
The scary thing is that, I hate to tell y'all, this South African variant's resistant to vaccines.
Yeah, well, they need to cut off. Are flights available right now to the continent of Africa? If so, cut them off. Yeah,
they've got, and that's the problem. I think that variant that's the scary variant. That's what's going to be worrisome. Is that, it's a very technical study to read. I published it, but they think that vaccine, that strain is so mutated, that the spike protein is so mutated that it may evade the vaccine. Because the way the vaccine works, I try to explain this last night on Facebook Live, is you train your body to recognize something that's foreign, and you bind to it and neutralize it. So it's like basically saying like a lock and a key. So your body recognizes, if your body's the lock, it recognizes that key is foreign, and it binds to it. And so if you unlock the door, that is your body's response that it's taking care of what's supposed to. So if you think of like the UK variant as a rusty key, you can get the key in the door. You might have to move it around and wiggle a little bit. You can get the key in the door, but it still opens the door. The South African variant is like a new key. It's like a completely different key. It's still a key, but the key's not going to get in that door. So that was the analogy I would use to describe what's going on. So again, more studies have got to be done on this, but there is significant reason to be, I'm not going to say panic, I'm just going to say extremely worried.
What is the current travel ban to South Africa and to the continent, period?
I'm honestly not sure. I don't think Americans can really go anywhere right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, I didn't know,
I'm honestly not sure what the travel restrictions are. I would assume that the South African government's probably locked that down like the UK government has. But and Brazil also has some of that variant too. So that is kind of where you're looking at.
Well, we need to keep it out of America, just like we did several years ago with the stomach thing that was eating everybody in Africa. What the hell that was?
And it may already be here. I mean, we don't know. Unfortunately, America, comparatively to some of the other countries, is a little bit behind on the amount of genomic sequencing they're doing.
And my next question was related to crowds also. I got an email notification today from Ticketmaster. The tickets go on sale for Jamie Johnson live at the House of Blues in North Myrtle Beach for March, as in 2 months from now. How?
Ain't happening. I mean, now, of course, South Carolina might say, screw it. I mean, I don't know.
They're just opening up, though. I mean, it's just, they're just saying, hey, we're opening up as of March. I mean, the House of Blues. I mean, I just don't know how.
I mean, Henry Masters is a different animal than Roy Cooper. And, I mean, honestly, I think Roy Cooper is doing now I think Roy Cooper could do a lot more too. But, I think if you see some states like, Florida and, some states like, South Carolina, they're just going to say, whatever, and just reopen and do it. And that's going to, a lot of people are going to die. I mean, there's a reason that the per capita death rate in South Carolina is way higher than North Carolina. And that's because we've, done a better job.
No doubt about it. What about that very thing of, you're talking about vaccinations, John, and we're talking, obviously, for just joining us, to Dr. John Bream, East Carolina, the pause on the men's basketball with the COVID outbreak there, and I think the baseball team had some as well. We'll talk about that in our roundtable. But it's very scary to think about this whole thing of vaccinations, and then maybe that there's different mutations like you're talking about. As far as we're talking about fans, so you don't think there's going to be any fans of, if it's short track racing, if it's NBA, if it's any of that, it's going to be a long, long time?
Well, I can tell you NBA's not doing fans this season. Like, they've already said so. I mean, I'm a Hornet season ticket holder. It ain't happening. They've already said not happening.
MLB said they would allow, Major League Baseball announced that they would allow fans this year in some capacity.
Well, MLB is a little different animal, though, especially compared to the NBA or hockey, because it's,
outside.
NBA, and it's outside. I mean, and I guess college football is too, but, it's just.
Now, let's just pretend that it turns out the South African variant either can be, it's not resistant to the vaccine, or it gets isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a possibility that if you've got vaccinated, they'll be able to proceed as normal as long as you have your vaccine?
I mean, there's a chance, I guess. It's just, I mean, that's going to rely on people getting vaccinated. I've said, I think the thing that's going to get people vaccinated is not, that they don't want to get COVID or whatever. I think that's what's going to get senior citizens vaccinated. What's going to get other people vaccinated is like they're not be able to fly, cruise, go to a big event or anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
that's what's going to get people vaccinated. But I mean, that's just going to be the catch-22. Are people going to do it, or are they going to say, you know what, it's going to ECU football games not that important. I'm not putting that stuff in my body. I hope not. Get the vaccine, but we'll see.
Well, what I hear some people saying is, if you get that vaccine, they're going to be able to track you. They're putting a microchip in you. Well, if you have a cell phone in your pocket, they can track you, you dumbass.
Well,
how about if you had to, the only way you get only way you can get it
anybody who says that, just say, don't worry about the vaccine. It's all right. You don't need to do that.
Oh, wow. Well, the only way you can get it Walmart or Lowe's.
And reading, there's a study I was reading the other day. So we talk about, the effective, the reproductive rate of COVID. And so it's actually much higher than we thought it would be, that initially we thought that if you had COVID, you would be expected to infect 2 to 3 people. Actually, you found out it's over 5. And so with a reproductive rate of over 5, then 82% of this country is going to have to be immune to stop the spread, either via vaccine or some level of herd immunity. Or 82% of the country is going to have to be immune at one point to stop it in its tracks. And so we got a really, really, really long way to go. And the thing is we don't know that. And I think the data is becoming more clear that even if you've had COVID, you won't get sick, but you can still transmit it to others and get them sick. I think that's where the data seems to be going, and that's what's going to apply with the vaccine as well. And so that's why, I think it's going to be hard to justify, large gatherings and whatnot. I don't know. To me, it's hard to see what it's going to be that's going to be able to get us back in large crowds. I mean, I struggle as a physician. I struggle to really figure that out. I mean, I think it's the worst it's going to be right now. And I think that we're just going to have to figure out kind of what's an acceptable level of risk tolerance, with a combination of vaccines and, all the other measures we can take. Is kind of like, well, when are you going to say it's okay? I mean, we know that it's simple, epidemiology is that we knew the first wave would be deadly, but smaller. We knew this wave that we're going through right now was going to be by far the largest. And we know that next fall we'll have a little hump too. And then, but that's standard viral. You can look at the Spanish flu, any other epidemic, you can look at, you can see this. I mean, it just is what it is. It's just fact. So we're going through the largest portion of it right now. So I do think that in the spring and the summer, things will be better. I think, honestly, it would have been smarter to have played, to push basketball seasons in the spring, to start basketball in March or April. I think that would have been a smarter thing to do. Yep. Instead of trying to get through this year, because the NBA is struggling to get it done. College basketball is struggling to get it done. I just don't think, in the context of how bad COVID is right now, anybody's going to be able to get it done. And I think we're just spinning our wheels.
Something you said a minute ago, if you've been infected, you're expected that you get at least 90 days before you can get sick again, at least. But right. What you're saying is you may be able to pick it up in that 90-day, not be sick, but spread it to others.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
You would still, the thinking is you could still have it in your nose and mouth, have the reservoir there if you're exposed to somebody, and then, give it to other people. Now, obviously, wearing a mask would significantly limit that. But that is the prevailing thought. And there's some new research out today that would suggest that. Actually, I've got to dive more into it. I actually saw it on TV about an hour ago, so I haven't got a chance to read yet.
And by the way, folks, read yesterday with, of all places, the Weather Channel, weather.com. They had a story where starting, I think it's January the 26th, Bubba's the numbers guy, but I think it's January the 26th. If you want to fly, 3 days before your flight, you're going to do a COVID test. Mm-hmm. And then as you're boarding the plane, you're going to have to show them the results. I thought that was a great thing, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are things that we can do. I think, I was listening to CNBC radio. They were talking about Delta was going to resume flights to Rome. I think that was but they were going to require you to do a test, when you before you get on the plane and when you land in Rome. They're required you'll have 2 tests before you can, be out and about in Italy or whatnot. So, I mean, I do think that's out there, but it's, hopefully we really get serious about the testing availability and all that stuff. I mean, I can tell you at some of the hospitals I work at, we reagent for the rapid test runs out sometimes, and you have to go to the backup rapid test, which is you still get it back fairly quickly, but not as fast as the 1 hour test.
Yeah.
But there are still even in the richest country in America or in the world, 9 to 10 months later, supply constraints.
Yeah, I had, you talk about tests. I got mine in November around in between the time of Veterans Day and Thanksgiving, and I tested negative twice initially. I started having symptoms on a Thursday. I went and got tested on a Friday. They gave me the antigen test. It came back negative, so they did the one they send off to LabCorp, and it also came back negative. And I kept being sick, kept running a fever.
Right.
So I ended up going back and getting tested a week or so later, and I came back positive.
Yeah, you got to wait. Usually, you have to be symptomatic for 2 to 3 days before your test will come back positive. That's your best time to get tested.
They actually tested Kyle for something else, but that's a whole nother show.
Well, and that also came back negative. Thank you very much.
Well, we have some questions here, John, for you. A couple questions we'd like to put up on the screen if you can. That last name looks very familiar, Rosenbaum. Anyway, Stacy Rosenbaum, she's asking, can you discuss the mRNA versus DNA vaccination?
Yeah, I mean, the mRNA vaccinations are what's out right now. So basically what they do is they take, the mRNA of the spike protein, and then they inject it into your arm. The reason the Pfizer vaccine's got to be stored colder than the Moderna vaccine is the way it's purified. So that, so it has to be colder so the mRNA can't be degraded. Basically the Moderna vaccine, the mRNA is a little more stable than the Pfizer vaccine is. And then they put the shot in your arm, and then your body picks up that, and it has the instructions how to make the spike protein. Your body makes a spike protein, recognizes it as foreign, and then makes antibodies to it. Basically, that's the mRNA. The DNA is sort of basically essentially the same concept. It's you do the DNA, you can inject a piece of the protein, however you want to do it. You just got to put some part of the virus in your body that your body recognizes as foreign, and then your body will react to it and make antibodies against it and neutralize it. And that's how any vaccine works. And so whether it's mRNA or it's DNA or it's protein subunit based, that's how it works. So you've got the Pfizer vaccine, which is Pfizer and Moderna are mRNA based. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, I'm pretty sure is DNA based. I'd have to look that up again off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's DNA based and an adenoviral vector, meaning that they put the DNA in a dead adenovirus, least capsid, and it does its thing in the system. And then you've got the Novavax vaccine, which takes a piece of the protein and injects it, and then they have what's called an adjuvant that makes the antibody response much more potent. It's their patented technology. I think Inovio is a DNA-based vaccine. I think AstraZeneca is too. But so I'm pretty sure those are all DNA based, and then you got the mRNA based, and you've got Novavax that's the protein based. So that's the important thing, is that you've got all these vaccines that work different ways, and you've got Vaxart, which is an oral vaccine that's way it's out there. It's way behind in the trials, but it's out there. That's IgA based, mucosal based immunity. So it's cool that at least there's all these different vaccines that work different ways. That can be scaled in different ways, and so that gives people a lot of different options. But at the end of the day, they all basically end up being the same. Is that that you have a foreign piece of the virus. This the virus is put into you. Your body recognizes it as foreign, makes antibodies to it, and so if you're exposed, those antibodies your body recognizes it, makes those antibodies quickly that neutralizes it, and so you don't get sick.
Any other questions, though, from the audience?
Yeah. Yes, she actually, Stacy's asking, does the vaccine create immunity, or does the vaccine decrease or prevent symptoms?
That is a great, great question. And I don't know that I think the data is clear on that. I really just don't think. I posted on my Facebook page, shameless self-promotion, Bream Medical on Facebook, that what we do know is that the vaccine creates a relative risk reduction, but versus people who got the vaccine and the people who the placebo group didn't get the vaccine, there was a relative risk reduction of 94 to 95% in people who had symptomatic COVID-19. That's what we know. in the Moderna trial, in the placebo arm, people died. I mean, there was a death. There were several hospitalizations. Ultimately, and then and then there's this guy. His name's Peter Doshi. He's a professor of pharmacology, or assistant professor of pharmacology at University of Maryland. Went through all the Pfizer data, not the EUA data, but the 400 pages of data, and found that there were like 3,000 cases of COVID-like illness in the trial that they just sort of discarded. They didn't report it. Now, these people, I think, tested COVID negative, but there's COVID-like illness, and we know that the testing's not great. So I think it's certainly reasonable to say that some of those were COVID. And so he was actually saying that the relative risk reduction could be as low as 19%. But even at that, I mean, I think what the data would show is that the vaccine will certainly seems to be effective in preventing severe illness, which is probably good enough. I mean, the goal is to not die. So even if it just prevents severe illness, that's good enough. I mean, and it's not, it's certainly, I guess, not what you really hope for, but it's good enough.
Certainly. Right now, we'll take baby steps, right, John?
Right. Yeah. You take anything you can get. I mean, the important thing is, to wear your mask. Really is to stop getting together in small gatherings and to wear your mask. And, this would just kind of all go away. I mean, if you look at, China has like 100 cases per day right now.
Wow.
Compare that to what we're going through. Now, obviously is China baking the numbers? Who knows? There are some people that would, but from what they're reporting, they're only having about 100 to 150 cases a day. And so, it's like, what, we could be there too. We gotta make our efforts to do that. And I mean, I can tell you, I hope you guys don't get sick, because there's not a lot of places you can go. I mean, I'm having to transfer people 2 and 3 hours away to find an available bed.
Wow.
Yeah, what people don't realize is what they don't understand is when you're a hospital, and this sounds like stating the obvious, you were talking about that earlier in our interview with you, that people don't understand that we have more than COVID to treat. We have obviously heart disease, you have cancer, there's all kinds of stuff, right? Obviously, all the great work you've done in the ED, emergencies come in, traumas, you name it.
Right.
And we don't have the capacity to handle COVID only. It can't be a COVID only hospital. And that's what I worry about, is people play the numbers game, but they don't put 2 and 2 together. The old cliche of the reality is that we have to have beds in a normal world, for a hospital. It's like a hotel. You don't have rooms to begin with, much less now.
Hey, John.
Right. No, I'm not going to speak in terms of specific hospitals because I don't want to get in trouble or anything. But
yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I can just tell you that when there's 3,990 people hospitalized, that bed space is at a premium, and you can read anywhere online that talks about that's a problem and what North Carolina's bed capacity is. I mean, that's data that's out there. But I mean, Duke has about 1,000 beds. Forsyth has about 1,000 beds. Vidant has about 1,000 beds. CMC has about 700 beds. That's 3,700 beds. And that's assuming they're all staffed. And so those are some of the biggest hospitals in North Carolina. When you put staffing as an issue at those hospitals, which may or may not be an issue. I mean, most hospitals are having staffing trouble right now because their staff is getting sick and there's units closed and all that stuff. I mean, it's very realistic to say that, 3,990 people would occupy just in itself would fill up most of the large hospitals in North Carolina. If we were just treating only COVID. So then when you compound that in the fact you've got people who are still coming in with their heart attacks and chest pains and COPD exacerbation and appendicitis and colitis, gallbladders and all that stuff, all that stuff's still happening. And so, I can tell you, I've spent hours on the phone trying to find people who, places for people to get transferred to. And, I've had to make, I'll do post generalities. I won't say, where these people ended up, but I've had to call 10 or 12 different hospital systems multiple times to get a patient placed. I mean, I can tell you the other night, what I will say is that I called everywhere between Norfolk, Winston-Salem, and Wilmington and struck out on a bed.
Wow.
And that doesn't happen.
John,
that doesn't happen.
Follow up to the hospitalization question, and a question that I keep seeing come up over and over again. And people want to, throw conspiracy theories behind it. So you probably know where I'm going. Mm-hmm. Why are the flu numbers so low this year?
It goes back to that effective reproductive rate number. So the reproductive rate of flu is about 1.5, meaning that if you have the flu, you're going to give it to about 1.5 other people. Whereas COVID, that number is over 5.
Wow.
And so if that number is below 1, then the disease stops in its tracks. It doesn't spread. So that all assumes no immunity, no masking, no social distancing, no vaccine, all that stuff. So when you have the flu vaccine and you have people wearing masks and washing their hands and all that stuff, the reproductive rate of flu has been pushed probably far below 1. And so it's just not spreading. And then you've got the fact that it's been warm in North Carolina this winter, which, you would have a milder flu season anyway when warmer weather is going around, then you're just not seeing it. Now, keep in mind, we're testing for it. I don't want people to think, well, you're not seeing because you're not testing for it. No, I mean, most of the tests we do in the hospitals are called quad tests, which means they test for flu A, flu B, COVID-19, and RSV. And so we're testing for it. We're just not seeing any. I haven't seen a single case of flu this year. And it's not because I haven't tested all these people for it who are getting COVID tests. It's because it's just not. I mean, there is flu out there. This flu is always out there, but it's just such a small amount right now that it's just it's not spreading. And so there may be an isolated case here or there, but it's just not what we're seeing right now.
That's interesting when you talk about wearing the mask. That's so true that most people would not be wearing a mask, and that's why they would get flu. If whoever has the flu would be able to pass that along. So that's a great point. John, I know that you got to get to bed. I know you got to get up early. I could talk to you for 2 or 3 hours on this subject, and you and I live it. But we'll wrap it up with Stacy's final question. If I had COVID diagnosed on December 4th, should I be concerned about other strands if I go to Disney in mid-March, or are there good chances I'll have some kind of protection? I'm planning on getting the vaccine before March.
Well, the vaccine, you got to keep in mind, you've got to have it in the second dose and then 1 to 2 weeks. So, and they're 3 to 4 weeks apart. So that's, 6 weeks. So you're talking about 6 weeks from the first jab before you're going to have, now, granted, because you've had COVID, we think the immunity is about 4 to 5 months. And, you'd have some level of immunity there. But that, again, doesn't mean that you couldn't get it and be able to spread it to somebody else who is COVID naive.
Right. So definitely
so you guys stay safe. Thanks for doing all you're doing. I know it's been probably not a ton of ECU stuff to talk about here lately, and not a lot of unfortunately great things to talk about with ECU. But you got your swimming and diving program back, at least in part, I guess.
We got half of it back.
Half of it back. I know your big things.
Baby steps.
So, all right, guys, y'all.
Have a good night, man.
Thanks for having me on. Have you come on anytime.
All right, safe travels.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Good night. Bye-bye. The Road Warrior, John Bream. That's what we'll call him now on, Kyle, the Road Warrior.
All right. Is he hawk or animal, or is he, just a whole nother breed of the Legion of Doom?
I think he's got it's his new version of Legion of Doom, for sure. Bubba, maybe you can tag team with him. The two of you are pretty fit, like John. You can be a part of Legion, the new version of the Legion of Doom. We'll have y'all be like cousins to Hawk and Animal.
The Doctor and Bubba.
It'll be fantastic. All right, still to come. We're just getting started because we have Joe Dooley later on talking about the pause with men's basketball. He had a press conference this afternoon, and we had a chance also to talk to Cliff Godwin. Very excited about the baseball program and what we assume it'll be February 19th. We're praying for that, and they have to prepare for that very thing, Kyle, for February 19th. If you get a little too slack, we're not going to play the series, then you're not going to prepare the same way. So you have to prepare for the season is a little over a month away, and we'll see if Rhode Island will come to Clark LeClaire Stadium again, February the 19th. We'll see if that plays out. And Bubba, are we ready for that interview?
Yeah, just one moment.
Okay.
We're going to be pushing for a 2-hour episode here with the Cliff and Joe Dooley
Yeah, we
interview.
are. Not planning on. Hey, by the way, guys, just got breaking news for Saved by the Bell fans. I know Bubba, Kyle, and I are.
Dustin Diamond has cancer. Does it say what kind?
Cancer.
The article I read earlier does not state what kind.
It doesn't. It just says with cancer. So, if you know Screech from Saved by the Bell, we're getting all kinds of information tonight. But Screech, Saved by the Bell, hope you get better, my friend.
Dustin Diamond. Jessica said she read it was stage 4.
Oh,
but
wow.
Does not say what kind. I mean, stage 4.
Oh, wow. I don't know. That could be good or bad. I mean, in other words, there's some stage 4 you're like, oh wow, and then sometimes stage 4, it's not. It depends on what type of cancer. But I'm not a doctor. Let's go now. Hey, Bubba, I know you had to work for a living. Kyle and I were off on Tuesday. We missed you on the interview, but you can pitch it now to Cliff.
Yeah, like you said, you guys caught up with the 7th-year head baseball coach of East Carolina, Cliff Godwin, and let's go to that right now.
Well, Kyle, very excited to have our next guest, one of our favorite people, and definitely when you talk about being a Pirate, this guy is a graduate of East Carolina University and the head baseball coach of East Carolina Pirates, and that would be Coach Cliff Godwin. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today, fellas.
No doubt, Coach. Very excited about the season. Whenever I talk about COVID-19, the first person that I talk about is you and about the team last year. Not to bring up last year and disappointment that we're in a brand new year, brand new season. But I know that the only reason I bring that up is I know you're excited about getting the season underway for 21.
Of course, we're definitely excited. And, last year's gone and there's nothing we can do about it. And everybody had to go through different types of sacrifices. And, of course, we were disappointed. But once the season was canceled, then it's on to the next thing. And fall baseball was awesome. It was definitely a breath of fresh air for all of our coaches, all of our players, all of our support staff, just to be out there and be able to practice with our guys, brought a sense of normalcy back to us and our program.
Coach, speaking of fall ball, obviously you get a chance to work with your newcomers out there. Who stuck out? Who's going to be a contributor right away?
Well, look, I just, number one, was impressed with the leadership our older guys gave to the incoming guys, starting with Zoom calls back in June when we could incorporate the incoming freshmen with our current team. And, you got guys like Matt Bridges and Cam Colmore who are 6-year seniors, and for them to make a decision of their life to come back for another year was really important. Tyler Smith, a 5th-year senior, and Jake Coochmanner. And, of course, your regulars of Ryder Giles and Francisco and Agnos and Bryson Worrell, just a lot of the older guys just help the younger guys. Just with the transition, they didn't have summer school like we normally do, and be able to be, work out our strength coach at that time and just get incorporated to a lot of different things. So the Zoom calls really helped in June and July, and then once they got here in August, we felt like that our older guys actually had a better relationship and understanding of the new guys because of the Zoom calls that we had over the summer.
You naming names, and Jake Coochmanner, Ryder Giles, et cetera, are names the Pirate Nation are very familiar with. And you just strung off a ton of names, and you know every one of them, and you can picture them in your head. Talks about the experience we have coming back, and the expectations for the 21 season with all the returning starters.
Yeah, expectations are what comes with ECU baseball, and nobody puts more expectations on themselves individually than I do, and our coaching staff and our players. I mean, look, our players understand what wearing the purple and gold means, not just on that diamond, but what it means in the classroom, what it means in the community. So I don't feel like it'll be a distraction. We'll talk about it not being a distraction with preseason rankings and preseason awards, and I say this all the time, but look, it's the truth. I mean, preseason stuff doesn't mean anything. They don't pass out trophies in the preseason. They don't send you to the College World Series in the preseason. So we've got a lot of work to do, and our guys have got back on campus and have done a really good job up to this point. So we're taking it day by day, and it's not a cliche in a time where you don't really know what tomorrow brings in our world. Is every day is a gift, and we'll go out there and attack each day. And we told our guys, got to be really, really ready to adapt in any situation. And, you look at the Cleveland Browns, I mean, their head coach was in quarantine and they had to win a playoff game in Pittsburgh. So prepare for maybe me missing the game, or Coach Dietrich or Coach Palumbo, or your Friday night starter or your starting catcher, and somebody else being ready to step up and fill that role.
Coach, I wanted to ask you, one of the things you were talking about, expectations in the classroom. I want to give you an opportunity again. Every time we have you on, we talk about GPA. I'm a huge fan of you. One of the reasons is the no nonsense kind of stuff off the field, including the classroom, but you got to be proud of the boys once again.
Absolutely. Going back to COVID, I mean, once the season was canceled in March, our first focus was, hey, fellas, look, it is what it is. We're all, upset about the season, but we still got a job to do in the classroom, and we're not going to live in the world of pass fail. That's not the world we live in. That's not the real world, in my opinion. Even in a pandemic, you guys can control your academics. So they reeled off a 3.61 in the spring last year, which was the highest team GPA we've ever had. And then they backed it up this fall with a 3.598, which is basically a 3.6 again. So really proud of what they've done, and just continue to make strides, and our older guys making sure that the incoming guys understand how important it is with our culture, what we do in the classroom.
Yeah, that's amazing to put those kind of GPAs, particularly right now, and all the distraction with the pandemic and virtual learning, and so it shows how committed they are. The pandemic, you hate to. It seems like it's the focus of every interview with every coach out there, but we don't have we haven't seen a schedule yet for East Carolina or any college baseball team because of the pandemic. Do we know a start date yet, or is it still up in the air?
Well, we're scheduled to play on February 19th, which is the first scheduled date you can play in Division I baseball. And we're scheduled right now to play Rhode Island at home. And I would tell you, as I tell our players, I mean, Rhode Island could call us up 3, 4, 5 days out and say, hey, we can't come down because there's been a COVID outbreak. Well, we're still going to look to play. If we have to go to UNC Wilmington or Carolina or State, whoever will let us play, we just want to play baseball. And, we've got to be ready to bob and weave and adapt throughout the entire spring.
Okay, so as of right now, typical February 19th, around Valentine's Day start date, not being pushed back as of right now.
No, it is not. There's different conferences that have maybe chosen to back things up, but as of right now, we're on schedule for February 19th, and we're playing at Clark LeClaire. So we're excited about that.
Do you know of any school? One follow-up question to this. Do you know of any schools as of right now in any conferences that are decided not to play this season?
I try not to look at social media too much, so I'm not well versed at that. I'm sure that maybe there's a school or two or a conference, maybe, but I don't know.
Okay. It seems like with football and basketball, the Ivy League is one that comes to mind. They always bow out. But coaches, speaking of COVID, another COVID question as far as the fans. I know there's so many people I've talked to on the street, people that I know personally, they're Pirate fans, so excited about Pirate baseball. Do we know, is it going to be the wonderful 7% as far as fans allowed? Have you heard anything?
I don't have a direct line to the governor of North Carolina, unfortunately. So I don't know if he cares a lot about what I think. But we'll follow whatever the protocols are from our governor and the CDC. And as of right now, I know it would be very limited of how many fans we could have in the stands. But holding out hope, as we all are, that there'll be more fans down the road.
And one of the things, too, Coach, is the fact we're very excited about, and maybe this is a blessing in disguise as far as fans are concerned. We've been talking on our show about the very fact of fans going ahead and sign up for ESPN Plus, the fact that baseball is going to be on ESPN Plus this year.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. I think, the brand of ECU and ECU baseball just being at the touch of your finger when you're on Apple TV or some kind of smart TV, you go to ESPN Plus, boom, you're there. And, of course, our broadcast and our feed is really good. I know Greg Pierce does a really good job just organizing people to make sure our feed is really good and it's high def. And, we're really lucky to have something that looks as good as
maybe a better question for Corey. Do you know if Corey is going to be doing the ESPN Plus games, or is he still going to be on IMG?
That's a good question. I have not got confirmation if he will be doing that or not. So I do not know the answer to that question. Sorry.
We need to touch base with Corey.
No doubt about it. Coach, as far as the season's concerned, one of the things I know that you get tired of talking about is Omaha, but one question that's not as far as when we're going to get to Omaha, but one of the things I always love is reading on, speaking of social media and tweets, is the very fact you say another stud coming to East Carolina. And I've always told people, if Cliff Godwin says the guy's a stud, he must be a stud. And one of the things I know that you have to go to Omaha is a lot of pitching. Is that something we can count on this year?
Yeah, and going back to your initial part of it is, I don't get tired of talking about Omaha in the College World Series. Look, it's not something that our guys don't strive for each and every day. I just want people to understand that there's only 8 teams that go, and nobody wants East Carolina baseball to go more than myself, our coaching staff, our players. And the thing as I grow older is we're not going to be defined as a team of not being the best versions of ourselves just because we don't punch the ticket to Omaha. And our kids work their tails off. They do the right things on the field, off the field. Of course, they're not perfect, but at the same point in time, Ryder Giles, Francisco, Agnos, Seth Cadell, Cooch Manor, Tyler Smith, Cam Colmore, and Matt Bridges, regardless if we go there or not this year, that's not going to be the definition of what kind of people and players they are. And, of course, we want to go there, and we're trying to go there every single day.
Coach, one of our guests we've had on, and we're going to have him on again, is Brian Kane, somebody that you know very well. I know the cliche that you always hear that any kind of sport is 90% skill, like mental, and 10% skill. But what does he bring to the table as far as the baseball program?
Brian just does a really good job of helping our guys with a lot of things, but I would say the biggest thing of mindset, their routines, their releases, being able to get themselves back into the present moment when, maybe things are speeding up for them on the field. But a lot of things they're able to do, just life lessons as well, with managing their daily routines and showing our guys different things that guys at the major league level or guys he has come in contact with that have been drafted really high, things that they have done in their processes to be very successful.
As far as the one other question I had too, as far as dealing with COVID is concerned, with scholarships, and obviously I'm sure you probably want to have more scholarships in baseball. That's a whole nother show we don't have time for. I know you're very busy, but as far as this year is concerned, how do you manage, you already have a big roster as it is, how do you manage, I guess that's something that's going to be a after the season kind of thing of knowing who's coming back, and like we did this past year?
Oh, it's a equation that has a ton of variables, and the variables change every single day. The draft is pushed back, and you don't know how many rounds the draft's going to be. And of course, you have multiple classes now of being draft eligible with the COVID guys. So, everybody is, the same year, but they're a year older. So they're draft eligible. So all of our COVID sophomores are draft eligible. All of our COVID juniors are draft eligible. And of course, you got the seniors. So, and then you got your incoming guys. So it is an equation that I tell you what, man, it's become more complicated by the day. But at the end of the day, we just got to have open lines of communication and communicate with each individual player and do the best we can.
Could you write a book on just this past year, all that you've had to deal with as a coach? I mean, you've been coaching for a good while now, but I would think that you could do that for one season. You could write the COVID year or whatever the title would be.
All coaches could.
Well, I don't want to go back there, to be honest with you, so I'll let you guys do that. I want to write about something more positive and something that's a little bit happier than what we had dealt with last year.
No doubt.
No doubt. Well, Coach, thank you so much. We're looking forward to this season. I know you're very, very busy. You carved out some time for us, and I don't know how you do all that you do, but you do it very well, and we're very excited about 21 and to see how things come out.
Well, I appreciate everything you guys do to promote ECU baseball and all of ECU athletics. So thank you for your time, and go Pirates.
All right, there's head baseball coach for East Carolina, Cliff Godwin, a guy that we think a lot of, and appreciate you, Coach, for all that you do for East Carolina baseball and the East Carolina program. What a great ambassador, Bubba. And I know that one of the things that comes to mind is last year was seeing him on the bench at Wichita State on the road. That was just so cool to see a guy that's, I'm sure that if it was Tiddlywinks, he could coach the men and women of East Carolina if we had that program. But anyway, speaking of programs in basketball, Bubba, we had, I know a disappointing thing happened this afternoon with the announcement of the pause in men's basketball.
Take your questions. I don't have anything to say, so let's fire away with some questions, guys.
Coach, just talk about how frustrating this news is. Obviously, to have your
Guess we're having some technical difficulties there. We'll.
The good thing is we've got great medical care. We'll take good care of our kids, and we'll move on once it's time to move on.
Here, we'll let him make a statement, and he'll take your questions.
I don't have anything to say, so let's fire away with some questions, guys.
Coach, just talk about how frustrating this news is. Obviously, to have to pause your program given everything going on.
Well, I think we probably expected it at some point. I mean, you say it, and you see it throughout the country, and you expect it, and then when you have to deal with it, it's a little bit different, obviously. And disappointing. The good thing is we've got great medical care. We'll take good care of our kids, and we'll move on once it's time to move on.
Got to feel like you've been relatively blessed so far for the most part. Some other teams have had it even worse than you guys have had. Got a little bit of work in over the course of time here, and what's the approach moving forward?
Well, I mean, we've got, we'll be down for a little bit. I think the biggest thing will be to see, obviously we'll continue testing and see how the results continue to come in. And we've got a little bit of a game plan from there going on. And then, I think a lot of it's just how the testing continues to go. And if it goes one way, we'll do one thing. If it goes another way, we'll have an alternative plan, and we're sort of at its mercy. So we'll just go ahead and adjust and move on and try to do the best we can.
With any players that aren't in the contact tracing or aren't positive, just to kind of clarify, can they go to the facility to work out on their own, or everything's completely shut off?
One of the things and I think until you've experienced, you wouldn't think, even if you're a roommate, you get shut down. So and basketball numbers aren't that big. I mean, we've got 17 players, and so they're in quarantine. Some of the players that aren't in quarantine, depending upon the schedule, we'll be able to, and not for the first couple of days, we'll be able to do some individual stuff provided we don't have any additional positives. But as of right now, no one's allowed in the facility.
How much do you worry about the guys' mental health just going through this? And I assume they'll have to be tested daily going forward too, and just kind of the stress and everything.
Yeah, that's the thing that worries me the most is the mental health part of it. Just because, but it's everybody. It's not just basketball players. I mean, everybody's uncertain right now. Everybody's a little jumpy. Everybody's a little little punch drunk, I would guess would be a good way to say it. And I think the players, it's a daily deal. I mean, they're getting tested every day. That's the good news, because they have, they know that they're getting tested and they have the opportunity to find out, and it's very timely fashion, and we've got access to testing. But it is a bit of a grind. I mean, having to do it every day. But that's part of it. Guys want to play, and in order to play, that's what we have to do. That's what we'll do.
It's a little more long-term maybe, but just with the league, obviously there's multiple teams who are kind of going through this, and as the postponements kind of rise, what do you think about the conference tournament and that logistically happening, or that being the end goal? I mean, do you think that's possible, or how could that work?
Ronnie, here's what I've figured out in the last 3 months. I'm not speculating on anything. I mean, I'm gonna go after we after we're done with the Zoom, I'm going to watch a little tape and then, wait for phone calls and see what happens, and we'll be prepared. But you can't tell day to day what's going to go on, and to worry about those type of deals. If they decide to have a conference tournament, we'll show up and play. And if it looks like a situation, my guess is the end goal of all this is to get to the NCAA tournament. So how do you preserve the opportunity to play in an NCAA tournament is probably the most prevalent thought process. And I don't know where a conference tournament would come into that or not come into that. I think we're all right now just sort of treading water and trying to make sure that we can protect our programs and our kids. And then when you can play, you can play. And when you can't, adjust and try to help them.
You guys as a staff, how will y'all use this time? Do you just go back and kind of self-scout? Do you go ahead and look at Memphis recruiting? Is a little bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. We self-scout after all, but we've gone through some stuff, and we jokingly talked about how many scatter reports have been cut up or ripped up and thrown away. But we'll look at some of our stuff. We have our tendencies down. I think we'll look at some additional stuff. It's obviously looking forward towards Memphis and all those type of deals. But I do think it's a lot of time to start looking at. There will be some recruiting, and even right now, recruiting is difficult because a lot of the kids aren't playing. So still Zoom, we'll still talk to people, but a lot of time in figuring out and having a plan for when we are back on the court. There's going to be some basketball components of it, but there's also going to be some conditioning components of it. You can't have guys sit out for a few days and then expect them to come back. And my biggest concern, with they talk about rescheduling is trying to jam these games in here. You go from playing 3 games in 30-something days, and then you look at 4 games in 8 days. I'm not worried about the COVID issue of that part. We're worried about the injury component. The NBA people are complaining about it already. They're, guys, you can't simulate the speed of the game, and then you start going 4 games in 8 days, and guys haven't played in 15, 18 days. It's not fair to the kids.
Kind of going off that, Coach. I guess you guys may have to play a doubleheader at Wichita at some point, and then I guess maybe at Temple as a result of these things. Is that too a concern, having to play all those games and potentially being on the road that much at some point if it comes to that? Yeah,
they're all a concern. I understand that you have to try to get the league games in, but there's no doubt. I don't know if that's ideal or not ideal. That's something that I didn't make a decision on those deals, but if you get, I know the intention of it is because you don't want people not showing up at road games because they're trying to get out of games. And now the flip side of that is when there's a concern. You give up a home game and have to play twice on the road. As a coach, that's not an ideal situation. I don't think there's a coach in the country that would, say that. Now, some of the smaller leagues have gone to where they're playing back-to-back on the road and then get 2 games at home. But our league isn't doing that. It's not, nothing right now is ideal. It's just going to be adjust and do what's in the best interest of the kids.
Do you think there's anything to this league, kind of the scope of it, the travel? Obviously, it's really spread out. Is that attributed to maybe what's going on with the league now compared to earlier, or what do you think?
Well, I don't know. You think about it, with a lot of leagues, even power leagues, Power 5 leagues, where, if you bust, can you get guys contact tracing on a bus? So you could lose some guys if someone tests positive. I don't think that. I don't know where it's coming with travel. There's probably a million different scenarios. We've had one person test positive, and it would have been one of the last people I expected to. Type of person that drives with a mask on his car by himself. just very, very, very safe. And I don't think there's a lot of rhyme or reason. I don't think anybody's figured it out. And I don't think the distance. There's a lot of leagues that are playing. There's a lot of, it's not just our league. It's a lot of leagues that are getting hit right now.
So you mentioned the conditioning component. That's probably going to affect the way you guys go about playing basketball, when you get back a little bit, huh?
It's tough. In order to play, you got to get in shape first. And you can, then the feel for the ball, getting all those type of deals, it's just going to be different. And, it's the same as guys coming back from getting hurt, but usually you can do some things. For example, if a guy's got a sprained ankle, you can do some exercises, you can do some different things. You can shoot, you can shoot off a chair. Now it's going to be the cardio component and the basketball component. So that's a little bit different, but that happens, with injuries sometimes.
Do you anticipate that affecting the way you guys go about it? Less transition play and, a little bit more half court?
I think we'll see. I mean, it's going to see how long. I think a lot of it also depends on how long we're out.
Anything else, guys? Y'all good? All right. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's the voice of Coach Joe Dooley. And thanks to Jody Jones, also the SID for basketball, East Carolina. You heard him as well. Bubba, what a break. Not the kind of break we want, and not break meaning time off, but man, this basketball season, I think basketball season's been tougher than football season, don't you?
Yeah, undoubtedly, and I feared that would be the case, and due to a lot of the variables that are obvious as far as team size, playing indoors, etc. And like Coach Dooley referenced right there, the guys' living arrangements with such a small roster size like you have in basketball, 17 guys on the team, 13 scholarship, and then 4 walk-ons. But yeah, it's been a rough go since we played right there a couple days, 3 days, I guess, before Christmas. And we were playing roughly once every week, and now we're going to go, from not having played from that last time out to missing 3 consecutive ball games: Cincinnati, Temple, and at USF.
And let me just say this: there are some people that are making the comments of we're not playing because we're losing. It's not because of that, but trust me. It's because of the very thing that we have to do what's, like Coach says, the best interest of the players. And when you have players and staff that have COVID, you can't play the game. It's not because you're afraid of losing. Let me tell you something. Joe Dooley is the last person that's afraid of losing. That guy is competitive in anything he does. So let's not start conspiracy theories that we're all of a sudden we're losing, so we're canceling games. That's not the case.
No, and as a coach and as a player, I mean, if you've been in one or both of those roles before, the very first thing you want to do after losing a game is practice and then play another game. I was very fortunate during my high school football career that we didn't lose much, and the one game we did lose in the regular season my junior year, as soon as we lost, I couldn't wait to play the following week.
No question. I mean, that's the competitive part inside of if you're a player or coach, the competitive nature, and that's not true. So I just want to put that out there, not just dwell on it. Bubba, we got some roundtable quick things. I know we didn't plan on being this long. We've had with Dr. John Bream and Ryan Wallen earlier, and then we obviously want to still get our interview in that we pre-recorded a couple of days ago. Coach God, we appreciate him very much. Had no idea we were going to have this the basketball outbreak. We talked a little bit about it, but looks like that it's going to be it's going to seem like about another week or two before we get back in the swing of things with basketball, right?
Yeah, it's looking that way. I mean, they're waiting on the numbers and to see exactly how significant the impact is. Obviously, multiple individuals tested positive, but I think that they're still waiting, according to what Coach Dooley said, to get all that data back and know exactly how long the wait will be. You mentioned baseball earlier, and baseball had 10 positive tests, and according to what I saw, it did not specify whether it's all players and coaches, or some support staff as well. So will be interesting, and I guess obviously you never want someone to be positive. That goes without saying. But since they did test positive, and that could bode well down the road for the baseball team if the majority or all of those are players.
No question. It's a tough situation, and the last thing we want for the baseball players who had to go without the season. I mean, play a handful of games and then your season's canceled was it's a ridiculous thing, and we know why it was canceled. It's just unfortunate for the players and coaches and the staff that put so many hours in. I can't imagine. We're not in their shoes. I can't imagine what they went through. But on the outside looking in, we definitely have an idea. Hey, Bubba, how about Urban Meyer to the Jags? What do you think about that?
Yeah, very interesting move and not surprising. And you've been hearing it for several days now, and you wanted to see how he would do at the next level after such a remarkable college career. He won everywhere, and not only did he win everywhere, he won big everywhere. Bowling Green, Utah, and then obviously Florida and Ohio State. But I think he won something ridiculous, like 85 or 86% of his games on the college level. It's of course not going to be like that at the pro level, and no pro coach or any coach at any level is going to win at that level, and percentage wise. But I think with the right support, will be very interesting to see how he does down in Jacksonville.
Well, I would imagine his popularity, and I don't know this is just off the cuff, but his popularity alone, that's going to sell some season tickets there. He knows the state of Florida. He knows the people there. I think it's a great fit. I think that Urban Meyer, and you look at it, Bubba, and it hasn't been but a couple years ago. I mean, they should have won the AFC Championship game and been in the Super Bowl. So it's not like this team has been god awful for a long time. This is actually a team that is a few seasons away from, which they choked in the. I hate to say it, but they did in the AFC Championship game, and this is a guy that can bring this back, and obviously with their owner has deep pockets, so a billionaire, and I think it's a great fit for Urban to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a really cool city, very underrated in my opinion, and the great weather, just everything is great about it, and I think it's a good hire. I really do.
Yeah, and I've seen some speculation. Charlie Strong, of course, the former head coach at Louisville, and then also Texas and South Florida. He was a defensive coordinator prior to getting his opportunity as a head coach. And one of the stops that he spent a long time at as the defense coordinator was in Gainesville. So there's speculation that he'll be the defense coordinator for Urban Meyer with the Jaguars.
Hey, that would be cool with me. And I'll tell you one thing. I was getting ready to say, I was getting ready to speak and talk about recruiting with Urban with the Jaguars, but their version of recruiting is the draft. The man knows talent, and that's going to be fantastic. Speaking of someone that would have to know talent, would be a general manager for a team, and it looks like the Carolina Panthers, Bubba, have a new GM.
Yeah, the Panthers are going to be hiring from everything we've seen. A guy from the Seahawks and Scott Fitter. He's very highly thought of. The Seahawks, if you know anything about the NFL, and they've been the epitome of consistency these last 8-9 years or so. They've won at least 10 ball games, I think, in every year, but maybe one. And in that one season where they didn't win 10, they won 9 and just missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they've been extremely consistent under Pete Carroll and that regime there.
Two Super Bowls.
And I saw some people, a few days ago when this was being rumored, having some doubts and stuff. I was like, well, I don't follow the NFL nearly as closely as I do college, but I do know enough about it to know how consistent the Seahawks have been. And when you're looking for someone in such an important position, I don't see why they would be so hesitant to be warm to hiring someone from the Seattle Seahawks, who've been one of the premier teams in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. When well, I'll put it to you this way: when you remember this, when we had our good friend Terry Gallagher, and we'll move on to our next topic. But Terry Gallagher talked about how great Dr. Leo Jenkins was. He said, "Hey guys, when we needed a football coach, Leo Jenkins went to Alabama and got Pat Dye." Remember that? I mean, so here's a situation when you want a good general manager, you want to go on a program and a franchise, in this case of Seattle, that's in it every year. I mean, they're always good. And Pete Carroll's a great coach. They've got a great franchise and a great program there. And he's a winner where, it was Southern Cal. They haven't been the same since Pete Carroll left, in my opinion. And then you go there. They've had 2 Super Bowls. You won 1, lost 1. You have a great quarterback in Russell Wilson. I mean, you could go on and on. We don't have the time. We're not going to talk.
You look what Texas is doing. There's no secret what Texas wants to play for, and that's Big 12 titles and national titles. And they go and get Steve Sarkisian from Alabama, who's obviously been a head coach before at the University of Washington as well as Southern Cal.
And you know what? We'll see how it works out with the other picks they've had recently, the last couple. What is this? We'll definitely move on. Sorry about that, but isn't this the fourth coach since 2013, Bubba? I think I read that for Texas.
Yeah, I mean that sounds right because you're probably going back to Mac Brown's last year. You had Mac Brown, Charlie Strong, Tom Herman, and now Sarkisian.
Yeah, so that's crazy. When you think about that, especially, but they have plenty of money. We don't need to worry about them. Hey, this is speaking of hires. I'm really happy. I don't know about you. I like Rich Rodriguez. Rich Rod going to ULM with Terry Bowden. That is really, really cool for Bowden. And I tell you one thing, man, the Sun Belt. It's just that conference. It was like such a joke to people, right? And we say it all the time on the show, but here's another great hire with Rich Rod and with Bowden. That's almost unfair to have those two coaches together.
Yeah, and tremendous hire for Coach Bowden down at ULM, no doubt about it. Having a guy that nearly played for a national title, had the Mountaineers, his alma mater, WVU on the verge of playing for the national title back in, I want to say, was it 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. Yeah, a year before, right before he went to Michigan. And then at Michigan, that program was pretty down. They just weren't going to be patient with him. That program seemed to be trending up, just not fast enough for their liking. And you saw the success that Brady Hoke came in and had with the talent that Rich Rod and the staff had assembled. Yeah. And then he had some good moments out at Arizona, but yeah, Rich Rodriguez, tremendous hire for ULM, and I'd heard some speculation with App State losing their offensive coordinator, Tony Peterson, to Illinois, with them being in the market for an OC, that Rich Rod had reached out to them, but that may or may not be true. But nonetheless, excellent hire for the Warhawks.
No question. We'll have to see how that plays, and certainly in the fall, but definitely you can't on paper, man, when you come into those two right there, unbelievable. I'm very excited for the conference and very excited for that program at UM, for sure. Bubba, very excited about, speaking of being excited, we have our very first sponsor. I want to thank Kaz for sponsoring the show. One of the things we do is Bubba's brainchild, that we know how much we had Cliff Godwin on with 23 Jungle Tales. I want to give a shout out to Kaz because he owns the company pgxgloves.com, and I know that he played at third base in the Randy Mazey era. He's been very good to us. He's an alum of the 23 Jungle Tales. He's been on with us. And Bubba, I'm very excited. I know that you and I have talked about it. For my kids, I'm going to get them gloves, and I know there's a lot of people out there that need gloves. There's a lot of people right now, they're just chomping at the bit to play golf right now. They have golf gloves, they have baseball gloves, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, Mark and PGX Gloves, and they were nice enough to partner with us for 23 Jungle Tales. We really appreciate them. And you talk about everything that's on the horizon. And obviously, baseball season is just around the corner, but Valentine's Day, so with those two things, birthdays, obviously, whatever the occasion, if someone and love is in need of a baseball glove, you can order it in their team colors, with their name, number, maybe a certain phrase or Bible verse, whatever that's important to them. So you can personalize it, customize it however you want it. You can do the same with batting gloves. And then also they have football gloves, golf gloves that you can do those same things with as well, as far as personalization and customization. And then they have some nice looking swag with that logo that you see on the screen there.
Very excited about that. And I'll tell you one thing, Bubba, by the way, my daughter loves tigers and lions. And when she saw that logo of PGX Gloves and the lion, she wants a t-shirt and I was telling her about the gloves. She's so excited. So Mark was very smart with marketing with their logo having that lion.
Yeah, no doubt. The purple and gold version that he cooked up for us is very sharp. I look forward to wearing that around here and wearing it to hopefully Clark LeClaire if we're able to watch some Pirate baseball in person this year. But we'll certainly be wearing that and telling folks around here that that are in the market for these items about PGX gloves. And if you're ordering one of these things, I mean, no matter what it is on pgxgloves.com, 25% off by using the promo code TheSportsOBJ, and like you see scrolling across the bottom of the screen, promo code TheSportsOBJ for 25% off anything they sell.
Thanks to Mark Minikazi, Pirates supporting Pirates, pgxgloves.com. And definitely you're going to get a couple orders from me, Mark. Be on the lookout this weekend when I finally have time to sit down and certainly sit down and order them. Thank you so much for being our very first sponsor. It means a lot. And definitely it's very cool to have a Pirate supporting Pirates right there. So, but anyway, Bubba, I know that we've been at it here almost 2 hours. We didn't plan on it being 2 hour show. A lot of breaking news today. We want to thank Ryan Wallen and obviously want to thank Dr. John Bream. They came on, and then of course we had the interview with Cliff Godwin, the head baseball coach of East Carolina, and Joe Dooley today talking about the Paws. We were not planning on that. We were planning on him talking about certainly the next basketball game, and that would have been with Temple. But anyway, it is like the saying goes, it is what it is. Bubba, do you have anything before we go?
Yeah, as I just put on the screen with 23 Jungle Tales presented by PGX Gloves, upcoming shows, we will talk to a guy who's a member of the 1961 NAIA National Championship team, Earl Boykin. Earl's an Eastern North Carolina native from Wilson County, so we will catch up with him at 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. So definitely check that out right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and it will, of course, be archived as all of these are on YouTube. We have a playlist to make them easy to find for you. All you have to do is search the Sports Objective and 23 Jungle Tales. If you search that, they will all appear. And then also we will be catching up with Bob Patterson. Bob's an East Carolina Hall of Famer. He was inducted, I want to say it was back in 1994, but he's been in there a while, and he had a tremendous career in the not only with the Pirates, but in the MLB for 13 seasons, played with 5 different teams, including the Cubs and Pirates. And I really look forward to that conversation with Bob. I want to say he's a native of Hickory, and I know now as I was reaching out to him, I noticed that he had an 828 area code. So I'm guessing that he may be back in Western North Carolina in the Hickory area right now.
Sounds great. Great town. Love Hickory very much. And if you're a NASCAR fan, love Hickory. A great racetrack as well. Thanks to all our great guests. Don't forget again to listen to 23 Jungle Tales presented by PGX Gloves. Get those orders in, pgxgloves.com, 25% off. Again, if you use the promo code thesportsobj.com, thesportsobj, I should say. Thank you so much for everybody listening and watching. And as always, folks, go Pirates.